Good morning, all. Thank you for joining us. I know we have a few more folks logging in, so we'll just go over some um, brief information about the office hours. Um, I apologize. It's terribly windy in Albany area today, so hopefully you won't hear things thrashing around outside. So hopefully you guys are having better weather. Definitely a tease for a few days. So today is our monthly office hours for the LEAPS after school programs. And we are halfway through. Oops, somebody's just getting a message from one of our staff. Okay, that's okay, Miana. We are halfway through year 2, so lots of exciting things happening. We feel that the contractors are having a better grasp of understanding the claims process. We recognize that there's been challenges all around, so we're trying to work through that together. So we are still having office hours monthly. What we are doing is having more of a theme for each office hours. We'll still have question and answer sessions at the end. So if you have some general questions about claims, we can certainly ask those. But starting off our office hours, we're going to have a topic each month relevant to the contracts. This month's office hours pertains to the upcoming LEAPS conference that's going to be held May 1st in Albany, New York. The New York State Network for Youth Success is hosting that, and it's part of their larger conference for empowering youth. So as always, we do record these office hours and we post them on our OCFS websites. If you do a quick Google search of New York State OCFS LEAPS, it usually will take you to our page. You can scroll down. There's a bunch of resources in general. If you haven't been on there lately, or you haven't been on there, I encourage you to check it out. And as you scroll further down on the page, we have these YouTube videos of these office hours. So sometimes it's helpful if you need a refresher, especially now we're talking about the LEAPS conference and the expenses. We're talking about it in March. You won't be preparing the claim until end of May, early June. So this is one you might want to earmark and go back and visit. So questions, if you have questions, we have a Q&A section on my screen. It's in the lower right-hand corner. It says Q&A. If you could just type your name, your organization, and your question, and we can get to them during the course of the trainings. So an overview of today's office hours is we'll be discussing a few different areas pertaining to the LEAPS, including New York State Network for Youth Success. They, in addition to hosting our conference, part of the reason they're hosting our conference is because they were awarded the School Age Technical Assistance Resource Center grants. SATARC is what we call it for short. Just like with the LEAPS grants, we put out information soliciting interested parties, eligible interested parties who were wanted to provide technical assistance to LEAPS contractors. We had a few recipients. New York State Network for Youth Success was one of them. They scored well and they were awarded the grant. So we're excited to be partnering with them. And I already mentioned the upcoming LEAPS and Boost conference will be offered, and the network will be hosting it here in Albany. The LEAPS conference on May 1st, that's a requirement for contractors to attend. So if you don't have staff already planning to attend, please go on to the Network for Youth Success website and look at that. If you have any questions, ask your program managers. Today we'll be going over allowable expenses related to the conference that LEAPS contractors can submit for reimbursement. And we also want to talk about April being Child Abuse Prevention Month and ways LEAPS contractors can highlight this month in their LEAPS programs. Sorry. So as noted in the LEAPS RFP and reference in OCFS communication with contractors, the LEAPS funding included money earmarked for a school-age technical assistance resource provider. And like the LEAPS funding is also competitive bid. After the proposals were reviewed and scored, it was determined that the New York State Network for Youth Success would receive the contract. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Network for Youth Success, they are, sorry, I just lost my place. They're an organization that's dedicated to building youth serving systems that increase the quality and availability of after-school and expanded learning programs. And we'd like to extend our congratulations to the network, and we look forward to working together. So about the network, they're not-for-profit that supports all programs that promotes youth, young people's intellectual, social, emotional, and physical development outside the traditional school day. The Network for Youth Success convenes partners and coordinates with them around a common agenda focused on partnership development and policy development, as well as capacity building. And the network connects practice with policy across a broad range of state, regional, and local partners that represents the after-school world, expanded learning, community schools, and youth development fields broadly. They provide professional development, including conferences, the school-age child care credential, and topics relevant to school-age child care programs. If you're not already familiar with them, we'd encourage you to sign up to their distribution list. Again, they're a great resource. They also have, they're the organization that has the quality self-assessment tool that OCFS is requiring our LEAPS contractors complete yearly. So definitely check them out and get on that distribution list. In addition to providing support to LEAPS, they'll also be providing support to contractors that received a New York State Boost Award. The Boost is building opportunities in out-of-school time that's geared towards older youth, older than school age. And some of our LEAPS contractors we recognize were awarded both a Boost contract as well as LEAPS. So congratulations to those folks. And again, the network will also be supporting those programs as well. The team members of SATAR will be or may have already been in contact with your agency. We know they're reaching out, they're making those connections. They will be conducting their own site visits independent of your program manager. So just recognize when we're talking about site visits with our staff, that's going to be different from what the Network for Youth Success will be contacting you about and what they'll be going over with you. Their support will include announced site visits and providing technical assistance to contractors across New York State. And this will include assistance towards increasing the enrollment and helping programs meet the threshold set by the LEAPS RFP. So in addition to the program-specific technical assistance, the Network for Youth Success will also be hosting, as I mentioned earlier, the 2026 Empower Youth Success Conference this spring in Albany. All LEAPS contractors are required to attend the LEAPS portion of the conference. If your agency has not begun planning for your key staff to attend a conference, please use the link that's going to be available to you in this presentation, or visit the New York State Network for Youth Success. If you put in the conference 2026, again, it'll bring you to that page and check it out and see about the different offerings, which we'll talk a little bit about later. We also have key information about the conference. The Empower Youth Success is a 3-day conference. We'll go a little bit more in detail, but LEAPS and the Boost Day is the last day, which is Friday, May 1st. So the first 2 days of the conference will serve community schools, 21st century learners, and after-school expanded learning. The LEAPS grant, the LEAPS grant will provide reimbursement for approved sessions. We cannot reimburse for staff not working on the LEAPS grants or attending specific trainings to community schools or 21st century. So please review the session information on the New York State Network for Youth Success website for sessions your LEAPS staff would like to attend on that Wednesday and Thursday, or Wednesday or Thursday. And please communicate this with your program manager, what sessions your staff is interested in attending. Your OCFS program manager will help you determine which ones are approvable for reimbursement through the LEAPS grant. Note that there is a dinner on Wednesday celebrating 30 years of the network. Reimbursement is for your staff that are in travel status, and OCFS can only reimburse up to the approved per diem. So again, I feel like I've said this several times now, but LEAPS Day is May 1st. There's no cost to register for that day or session that day. So if your staff would like to attend the prior days, again, these need to be pre-approved by your OCFS program manager prior to attending the conference. For eligible expenses, we would encourage you to review your Year 2 LEAPS budget. In the travel category, in the after-school line and narrative, as a refresher, it talks about what the allowable expenses are. You can also review the LEAPS RFP, and all the approvable expenses are charged to the after-school conference line. So if you have staff driving up to Albany and that mileage is to be charged to the after-school conference line. A lot of programs have a mileage line within their travel category for their staff. They're traveling local from site to site to pick up supplies. We do not use that mileage line for the LEAPS conference. All the expenses for LEAPS conference are to go to the after-school conference line when you're preparing your claims. Let me see. New York State allows for reimbursement for staff and travel status. So what does that mean? So we have folks, several programs, not a lot, but several programs in the Albany area. Those folks are not eligible to stay overnight in Albany, and they're not eligible for the meal per diems. This is for staff traveling from out of town. So let's take a look about what is travel status. What is travel day meal reimbursement? Only breakfast and dinner are eligible for reimbursement. Travel expenses to Albany, to and from the train station or to the hotel where the conference is being held are allowable. So if staff are coming up here and they're saying, some folks like to stay on Wolf Road. It's kind of our more commercial area. It's kind of in the suburbs out of downtown Albany, but there's shopping, there's restaurants. So staff come up here in the train. They can take the train up to Albany. They take the cab from the train station to their hotel that night they arrive. And then the next day they can take the cab or rideshare service from their hotel to the conference. Those are travel expenses we can reimburse for. We're not able to reimburse for if staff decide they want to take a cab that night and go out to dinner somewhere. Those are just expenses that we can't reimburse for. It's only from the train station to the hotel to the conference, etc. We also can't pay for other types of entertainment. The car travel, if you have staff traveling by their vehicle or rental car or one of your agency cars, the travel must be logged properly on a log, including the date of travel, start and end times, start and end mileage to the locations. These forms, along with toll records, must be submitted to your agency for reimbursement by the traveler, and your agency needs to maintain those for your records, or if you're one of those contractors, you get flagged for an audit. Let's see. So some of you who've developed the budgets may recall this. We talk a lot about the reimbursement rates. In the contracts and the travel section, we have links to the appropriate government and state travel rates. The reimbursement rates must not exceed the approved government rates for the current federal fiscal year. And again, embedded in this PowerPoint, we have a link to the OSC's traveler guide that can provide some more information for you. The per diem rates apply to the destination, which will be Albany, not the location of the employee's residence or the agency's main office that's holding the contract. The current breakdown of per diems is listed here. If a contractor cannot secure a hotel room at or below the state rate, the contractor will be responsible for paying the difference. We are not allowed under New York State contracting laws and regulations to reimburse travelers more than $117. The rates listed here are for per person. So if two staff are sharing a hotel room, the reimbursement can be up to $234. So that some folks find flexibility there. And note that contractors can only claim the actual amount. So if two staff share a room and it comes to $180, OCFS will reimburse up to that amount. So let's take a look at how this will be claiming on the annual breakdown of actual expense form that will be submitted. So if you take a look here, as I mentioned, we have the after school line. We require that in all the LEAPS year 2 budget. The contractors determined how much they anticipated the expense to be for that travel. And at the time of development, we didn't know if the LEAPS conference was going to be 1 day or 3 days. We weren't sure if there was going to be a fee associated with the conference itself. So fortunately, the network was able to have the LEAPS registration day be free. So for people who are coming that day, it's just the travel expenses. So in this example, if you look under Q3, when this contractor had incurred these expenses, we have the $1,056. So you put the total amount there. And then we have the NPS form. On the NPS form, we would break it down to what the expenses were. So the contractor booked the hotel on April 1st. They had booked it for 3 staff, and the total amount came to $702. Then we have the staff list breaking out the meals. So the expenses were for May 1st were for this employee for LEAPS conference meals. If your staff are here for multiple days, you can do like from 4/29 if they arrived in Albany and they went home at the end of the day on May 1st. You can do the 4/29 through 5/1. Fortunately, the conference date is within the same quarter because we're not doing monthly claiming anymore. So that's one thing that's helpful. So ultimately, what we want to see is that the information's here, and if there's any questions, and we reach out to your organization, you have the backup supporting it, or if you get flagged for an audit, that information would be there. So we had left this blank because just to go over the different types of examples. So like on May 1st, if Amy was only eligible for that the meal, she would have the $69 here. But this is where we want to see the details of how you came to that $1,056. So some things to remember. Please have someone review the travel requirements with staff attending the conference to avoid incurring expenses that will not be reimbursed by the LEAPS grant. Remind staff to be practical with the allowance. Under no circumstances will OCFS be able to reimburse for expenses that exceeded the per diems. Explain the process to your travelers so they have a clear understanding of the reimbursement process. OCFS will not reimburse for alcoholic beverages or entertainment activities. When we were doing these claims for last year, it's unfortunate, like some of the staff seem to not have understood what was allowable, not what was allowable. And unfortunately, like some staff went out and had some pretty nice meals, and we were only able to reimburse up to the amount. So your agencies unfortunately ended up, like, no pun intended, eating the cost of the overages. That happened with some of the hotels, but we saw a lot with meals. It just reminds staff, like, this is the set amount that they get. The $69 for dinner, they can only go up to $69 for dinner. They don't get the full $69 back. So we need to have the receipts supporting the amount you're asking for reimbursement. Some staff seem to tack the breakfast onto dinner and thought that they would be eligible for a more expensive dinner because they didn't use the breakfast per diem. It doesn't work that way. We need the breakfast receipts. We need the dinner receipts. Let's see. Provide travelers with your agency's tax exempt form. So whatever form, like back in the day when I worked for nonprofits, we had this paper we'd carry around. Whatever the version your agency has now, make sure that's provided to your staff before they travel. Usually when you book the hotel rooms, you can tell them you're not for profit. When the staff shows up to check in, they need that documentation for the hotel. And let's see. Oh, because OCFS, we can't reimburse for sales tax. So if that's claimed, that amount's going to be disallowed. The travelers are responsible for obtaining the receipts and submitting them to your agency along with their expense reports. So please have them, remind them when they leave that they need to collect everything. And then when they come back, whatever expense reports they need to do for you, I would ask them to do it within 5 days of coming back. So you can get that in your books and hopefully receipts won't be lost. Sometimes that happens when you have those things floating around and multiple people. These items need to be stored with your other backup documentation for the quarter being claimed. And as I mentioned, sometimes receipts get lost. People are traveling, they've got multiple bags and suitcases or whatever. If staff do not have the backup, it cannot be claimed. So if they come back and they can't find that one dinner receipt, you can't claim that. But if the backup is located at a later date, before your agency's done claiming for the year, we can do a supplemental. That's not uncommon. That happens, but just please prepare your staff for what they need to do, especially if they're new travelers. Travelers are reimbursed by their employer who submits the expenses on the LEAPS quarterly claim. So sometimes we do have staff that are contacting our program managers. We want to be very clear that they're to submit their expenses to your agency, not to OCF staff or not to New York State Network for Youth Success staff. They are not responsible for reimbursing the travelers. We already have, your organization already has money in a line for it. So please go and advise them as to what the proper channels are. Okay, so again, as I mentioned, embedded in the PowerPoint are some resources. Again, the PowerPoint will be available online along with the YouTube video of the recording. It'll be a few days before we can get it up onto our website because some behind the scenes work has to happen. But links include the New York State Network for Youth Success registration, Empower Youth Success, the New York State Comptroller's website. They have a traveler's manual, so that's a good resource to have. And then, of course, we had the LEAPS RFP. So feel free to put some questions into the Q&As. While we're receiving those questions, we can jump to April. Hopefully, most of you know, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. It's celebrated nationally, as well as here in New York State, and a lot of the local Department of Social Services and prevention agencies celebrate it. And we're hoping that after school programs that don't already celebrate this month do. So we know that supporting families is a key factor in the reduction of child abuse and learner neglect. And one of the ways that we support families is by funding programs such as after school programs. Protective factors are one of the strategies that New York State uses. So please think of ways that your agency supports families. Some of the ways that we can think of are providing a safe space for children after school while the parents might be working, and unable to be home. You provide snacks and meals to children. Our programs are about building relationships with the families who attend the program. So getting to know the family members' names, greeting them when they come in, providing updates about their children at drop-off if you have morning care or summer care, or pickup times, having the person who oversees your child's group being the one, if possible, communicating with the parents or checking in with them, providing resources to families, including families impacted by food or housing insecurity, and utilizing staff in the LEAPS grant to connect with families and provide support. Providing education about child development and positive ways to support their children. Because the after school program is just not a place for the children to go and get meals and have fun. But again, it's about connecting families with your organization, the school. It's a connection because a lot of families, and myself included, my child's in school for several hours a week. I don't drop him. I'm not handing him off to a teacher. I'm not having a communication at the end of the day to see how his day was or how he's doing. It's the after school staff that has that role. And it's a really valuable role. And I hope that the staff in your agencies and we recognize it. And I hope that they recognize what an important value it is, because this is somebody who's spending time with their children. It's a connection for the families to their child and what's going on in their lives, like what they're learning. If they're struggling with their homework, that sometimes staff can have the communication family saying, hey, we're working on math and your child is having issues with this, concept in math. If there's connections like with the school, that might be great that the after school program can do. Some of our after school programs you guys are also unique, which is what's really nice about all this. And there's a lot of learning opportunities, which is what we're hoping to explore in some future office hours. But some of our programs have like social workers on staff. They have staff people who connect directly with the families. One of our programs, I know they have like a homeless specialist for families who are without permanent housing. So this is a person who keeps connected to the family to see where they are, what they need, and also it's a link between that family, their needs, as well as the after school program and the school itself. So there's a lot of great things that we can do with the LEAPS funding if you're looking for some new ideas for next year. But we'll be exploring more of that. So as far as the child abuse prevention, you're already doing this work. So let's highlight what we're doing. And share the message with families. If you have activities that the children participate in or larger events, send us the pictures, include this information in your program reports. On the next slide, we'll have resources, including OCFS resources about the protective factors calendar for families and things that they can do. And we're looking forward to seeing your LEAPS representatives in May at the conference. And we can't wait to hear about the exciting things you're doing year round, as well as for Child Abuse Prevention Month. So here's some resources. Again, New York State OCFS, we have our prevention page. Here's helpline. That's a helpline for parents. If your organization is not familiar with it, please visit this website and provide this resource. This is something you might want to share in your newsletter or have posted at your after-school program for families. We have a protective factor calendar that's geared for families to work on together, just highlighting some of the things that they're doing in their own lives, or just making suggestions about activities that parents and their children can do. And we also included the Prevent Child Abuse New York. We have a statewide agency. They have some resources there. And we have Prevent Child Abuse America. So if you're seeing pinwheels and you're not sure what's going on with that, that's what it's about. Some of these links have ideas on how to make pinwheels with kids and what the meaning of the pinwheels are. So if you're not already familiar, we'd encourage you to do that. All right, the next section, questions. All right, we got a few questions. Which days are travelers eligible for per diem? If they arrive the night before, is that dinner covered? Yes. So if your staff are traveling, let's just say on Thursday afternoon, they get in a car around 3 o'clock heading out from the city or coming out from out west. They get here at 6, 7 o'clock. They're eligible for dinner. Okay. The lodging guidance in relation to cost per person. Each person, New York State, for people on travel status, they're eligible for $117 per night. So the night that they travel up here, and then the overnight. So if they're coming for the LEAPS conference on Friday, the LEAPS conference ends, I think it's around 5 o'clock. So staff can go home that night. So we wouldn't be paying for lodging on Friday night. They would get a meal for their travels home. Unless there's some extenuating circumstances that somebody can't travel home Friday night, speak with your program manager. But it's $117 per person per night. And if you have staff that are able to share a hotel room, again, we'll reimburse up to $117 per traveler for the lodging. So if 2 people are sharing a hotel room, we can go up to that $234. What rubric or guidance is being used to determine what conference sessions? So the conference sessions were reviewed internally at OCFS to see which ones are appropriate. Some of them are clearly for community schools or our school environment setting. We would not be supporting staff to go to that training. Again, we're funded after school programs. So we would be looking at the training that's relevant to the operations of the after school program, the programming within the after school programming, and training staff. Some of the trainings were geared towards community schools and leadership. Like those are trainings we would not be covering. We have an emphasis of supporting the LEAPS programs, the after school programs. Lunch provided at the conference? That's a good question, Christy. I believe it is. If anybody from OCFS, I'm pretty sure it is.
Yes, the lunch is provided.
Lunch is provided. Okay, thank you. So yes, lunch is provided at the conference. So the per diem is sufficient to be covering breakfast and dinner. No problem. If we only attend sessions on the Friday, LEAPS, do we need to get our session selected? No. Good question. So LEAPS conference is specific for LEAPS. So you do not need prior approval for Friday's conference. Just if your staff are coming up Thursday or Wednesday and Thursday, then yes, those sessions, because they're broader sessions. Some of the 21st century, I think, is just for 21st century contractors. I think you can only register if you have a 21st century contract. So some sessions you probably wouldn't even be able to get into because you wouldn't have the information to log into it. But some of the other sessions, like community schools, it appears that you can register for those. So like I said, we had to review all the conferences. We had reached out to some of the presenters to get clarification about what the topic would be. So again, your program manager can help you with that. Yeah, just the Wednesday and Thursday sessions need to be approved. Our staff will be there on Friday at the LEAPS conference. So keep an eye out for us and your program manager. It'd be nice to see folks outside of a WebEx or a Teams meeting. Our staff have been doing site visits, and I feel like we've kicked off pretty hard this contract year. So I'm grateful for our team because I know and your team, because I know there's been a lot of competing priorities as far as getting the year twos done. You guys are delivering programming. We're doing lots of meetings, a lot of emails back and forth, but our staff have been out, but it'll be nice to see folks in a low pressure setting. If you receive both LEAPS and 21st Century, are we allowed to stay for the Friday session? Well, the Friday session is LEAPS. So someone from your organization needs to be attending that. So yes, we expect to see at least one person for all LEAPS contracts to be there on Friday. So your staff will be traveling from Central New York Thursday and then home Friday after the conference. So staff traveling from Central New York, you'll be eligible for Thursday meal per diem, Friday breakfast, and then because the conference ends later in the day, your staff will be eligible for dinner on Friday night as well. Yeah, and no apologies necessary. I feel like we can't say that enough, just so we're all clear on it. It gets a little tricky trying to understand how the per diems work. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else relevant to travel. So folks who are staying, so folks that were able to get the per diem rates at the conference, I know that's sometimes a challenge with the lodging, getting the state rates. If your staff have to pay for parking at the hotel they're at, tell them to keep the receipts for parking. That's something else that's helpful. I think it's best just to keep all the receipts and they can provide it to your finance person, sort out what's needed and what's not needed. All right, and something else related to claiming we want to touch on. The claims process, it's been moving along well this year in the sense like we're getting the claims from the contractors, we're able to process them. Folks seem to be understanding what's required. What we are doing is we have our audits that are scheduled. If you're a contractor that was scheduled to have an audit by our office, you have or will receive a letter. It's just heads up when you claim, make sure you submit all your backup to into CMS. But we're also getting a lot of contractors who are getting flagged for audits outside of OCFS. So that's the state comptroller's office. What's required of that, what happens with that is our team gets notified that the contract has been selected to be audited. We have to reach out to our contractors and get the information back to them. We're given really tight turnaround times. So if you are one of these programs, our staff will be reaching out to you saying, hey, your contract was flagged for an audit. You have 24 hours to get the paperwork back to us. We're given a really strict time frame. So that's why we're giving you strict time frames, because we have to get the information back to you. We have to review it as best as possible, make sure we have anything, possibly reach out to you for more documentation, and then get it over to the state comptroller's office. There's been a few situations where your program manager was emailed directly that the contract was being audited, and we've had some staff taking time off, well-deserved time off. And the managers, supervisors weren't aware of these requests until the person came back, or until we found out that the claim was rejected because the information wasn't provided to the state comptroller's office in a quote unquote timely manner. So we worked out a system internally with an OCFS to avoid those issues. It seems to be working well so far. So if your program manager's out, there's other people who are included in that communication, and then we can reach out to you and your program manager's applicants to say, hey, heads up, audit, we need those documents. There was an office hours last month and about the audits. That information is online on our OCFS LEAPS website, so check that out if you're not familiar with it, or you just want some reassurance that you understand the process. I think the contractors that seem to have the most success with these are the ones who are prepared. So organizing your documents on your end. So if there's an ask, those documents can be sent to us in zip folders, or however you manage your backup. Another key piece of information that we run into some issues with is if we reach out to your agency and the person who maintains the files is out for a well-deserved day off or two, and no one's able to get the paperwork to us. So, we all have internal systems. If there's room for improvement, I would encourage you to be proactive and look at your current systems to see if your program manager reached out to you, you could get the paperwork back to them within 24 hours in an organized manner. Obviously, the more organized the paperwork is when it gets to us and we move it forward, the more likely that claim's able to get paid out and be fully approved. You might see, this came up recently, if you're savvy in CMS, we have some folks who log their claims. They like to track where the claim is. They see it's approved within OCFS, but then there's like a delay. That delay, and you will be notified if it impacts you, would be to an audit. So even though it looks like it's approved by us, if it gets flagged for an audit by the state comptroller's office, we don't have the backup, or we don't have it in time to give to the state comptroller's office, your claim will be rejected. So if there's any confusion around that, I hope I just provided some clarity. And feel free to plug in any questions around the audits too, and we'll do our best to answer them. The other thing we need to do is we are in the third quarter, hard to believe, of year 2. So thank you. There's been a lot of work we've had to do this year, but we do have some contractors that haven't submitted their year 2 budget, or they've submitted it and they've been provided revisions that they need to do it, and we haven't received those back. It's really, really important that we get this information done. We need to get these budgets done. We had due dates back in September. We gave extensions in November, and here we are 4 months later, and we still have some contractors who are not utilizing their time management skills as far as getting the documents back to us. We recognize, I think we're clear about where there are delays that do occur on our end. So we acknowledge that, but we are well past the point of having these budgets not being approved. Like, what happens is it's just going to build you up for challenges down the road. If your budget hasn't been approved yet, or was just recently approved, your program manager should be giving you due date to get Q1 and Q2 in, so we can get you caught up with claiming. A lot of challenges happen behind the scenes when we don't have claiming up to date. One, this is the end of the the state fiscal year in March. We get lots of asks about how much money we've used, and we can't report back accurately because we don't have budgets that are done or contractors that are behind on claiming. The other issue we run into is, for your benefit as well as our staff's benefit, is we plan our schedule. We plan our site visits around when these claims are supposed to be coming in. So if somebody has 30 contracts and only 10 of their contracts have claimed and the other 20 are outstanding, it really makes their workload challenging to plan their site visits, to come out and see organizations and see the work that you're doing if they're anticipating getting 20 more contracts, 20 more claims. The other part of it is data. What helps support us to get funding for after school programs, there's a lot of great programs out there, not just after school, that want funding, that need funding. And we are so fortunate to have, I cannot believe how much money we were able to get for the LEAPS funding. We're delighted about that. We're delighted seeing how it's used, but there's also ways we're not seeing how it's being used because we're not getting those claims in. What I do find is our contractors, we have some folks who decide to submit like all their claims at once. That is not a way to function in the sense that we don't know what's going on. We don't know how your money was spent in October or November. We might be asking questions, and if your program person's no longer there, there might not be anybody there to answer those questions because you're submitting the claims so late. I started talking about data. We don't have data from you if we don't have your claims. So when we're trying to prepare our reports to justify keeping this funding coming, it's not helpful when we have a lot of blanks because we have contractors who haven't given us the information. So we are really stressing, we're trying to streamline internally, but the expectations are in contracting compliance that you're supposed to get those claims in 30 days at the end of the quarter. So we're really going to be emphasizing that as well. So if you're having problems, we recognize that there's a learning curve sometimes. Our CMS system for some folks is not very intuitive. Our staff are more than happy to spend time with you to help you understand it. And if your program manager is out, then one of us can step in. But please don't hesitate to ask for help if that's what's holding you up. And of course, we have office hours every month. So if anybody has any general questions about claiming, feel free to put those in. And just my managers giving updates. Thank you, Linda. And of the year 2 claims that have been submitted, all have been processed and paid within 30 days outside of those OSC audits. So again, we've had our lessons learned from year 1. We saw where some of the challenges were. Our administration listens to the feedback from the contractors, from our teams, the people who are doing the work, and we did streamline the system. So again, those claims are being paid within 30 days. And as you know, if you've been doing claims, the quarterly claims, it's my preferred method. And I know some folks have different opinions about it, but we are able to get more money out the door in less time than we had been last year. Let's see. Any other questions? Let's see. If you haven't done so already, we're going to be reaching out to some contractors. Our team has created a link that we had sent out, and I think it's been sent out more recently too from our LEAPS mailbox about updating your contact information. So if you haven't done that already, or if there's been some changes, please, update that information because that's helpful for us in keeping communication with the contractors. Sometimes your program manager, if they're in a training, they're on a site visit down the road a lot more. If we need to get in contact with somebody there, it's helpful that we have updated information. When do you anticipate providers will receive credentials to start using Pathwise for data entry? That is, I don't know. We can certainly reach out to the network and ask them about that. So yeah, we can definitely inquire about that and share that information. Can you provide more details about the audits? The audits, so yeah, there's different types of audits. Sometimes we have our official audit where OCFS will send a letter to contractors a few months before the quarter that you're being audited. So you'll have sufficient time to know that this audit's coming. They'll provide like what kind of backup we're looking for. And then when you log your claim, the requirement is that you log all your backup with the claim. So all the OCFS reviewers can review your backup. Again, the more organized your backup is, the more clean it is, the quicker the audit is. So that's helpful for you because that means we can approve the claim quicker and get it out. Sometimes we do have questions about an expense. We might need clarity, or there's something that's misleading that was put into the program report, or not misleading, but not clearly reported. Or and non-personnel services, that's where I see it. Sometimes there's something that's like somebody might say, this is for our insurance from June of 2025 until June of 2026. So I'll reach out and say, hey, can you provide me clarity and some backup documentation, because we can't pay for June, July, and August of 2025 because that was for your year one budget. So there's questions about that. And then the state comptroller's audits, and anybody in our team, feel free to jump in. But my understanding is like the OSC audits are similar to our audits. We're just looking for supporting documentation for the expenses and proof that it was paid, payroll records. See, I don't have the letter in front of me, but the letter that's sent out to contractors outlines what you're expected to provide. So it's not just that the expenses were incurred, but also like if you're using a credit card, showing, clarification that you're paying off the credit card, bank statements, payroll records. Any other questions? And actually, the letter for the audit is in the PowerPoint deck from the February office hours. So again, if you go onto our website and you look at the PowerPoint deck, the slides that were presented that day, the information is included in there. And I think it's helpful just to go back and look at that training, whether you attended it or not, especially not, go look at it and see what the expectations are and what some of the questions were. You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, again, if you have any questions, if you want to put it in here in the Q&A. Chances are, if you have a question, I know other folks usually have those questions, but maybe they're not sure how to frame it, or maybe they just kind of forgot about it. It's like something you think of while you're doing claims. At that moment, you're like, oh, that's right. That I had that question last time. So please, I think all the questions are great questions, and any clarification we can give to our programs, we're more than happy to. Yeah, for the pathwise, I'm going to refrain from answering that question just because the Network for Youth Success will be handling that. So I don't know if the attendance about to be backdated to the start of programming, but we can certainly write that question down and share that with them. Yeah, a notification will be sent out to our contractors about the pathwise requirements. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be in our future office hours. We're going to have more themes like we've started, like the audit last month, the LEAPS conference expenses for this month. So we would encourage your team to attend these office hours. So sometimes it's going to be geared specifically towards fiscal, but we're also looking at expanding it more towards programming. Again, some of the best resources we have are you guys, as for our contractors, seeing the great work you're doing when we're doing site visits, your program reports. We will be having a program report overview just to provide some guidance for contractors who might, there's room for growth as far as reporting what they're doing. There's great work that's happening. And I mean, it's exciting when we see those program reports. Some of you do a phenomenal job as far as providing the level of detail, embedding pictures into the program report, attaching your newsletters, sending us links. Some programs have YouTube videos or they're featured on the news, your local news channels. We're so excited when we see that. That's really what that kind of fills our cups, because we're spending a lot of time in the office with budgets and numbers and this and that. And I mean, most of our people are program people at heart, where they are out in the field, they're working with children and families, or working with family support agencies. So that's what we love seeing, and we want to see the great work you're doing is being captured. What I tell people is we're out doing site visits. Our managers doesn't have that luxury of being out with us because of our work demands. Our managers, our deputy commissioners, they don't always have the luxury of being out in the field. So sometimes we're asked about programs like, hey, can you tell me about this program? Or can you tell me a program that does really good work in this area? And we pull out the program reports. Now, there's some programs we know that you do good work because we've seen it when we do site visits. But if it's not captured in a program report, it's hard to sit there and say, oh, here's a great example of a program that does great work, and you have a really like minimal program report. And I tell people like that's like what people are looking at in our office. So you're telling your story of your program through your program report. So like let's capture that. So we'll be having program report overview. And as I mentioned, we'll also be focusing on programming itself. I know one of our staff has taken the lead on it, and she has some fabulous ideas, and she's really conscientious about the timing of some of the topics and how it aligns with the after school program schedule as far as your calendar year. So, we'll be presenting that beginning next month. So yeah. So when we send out the office hours, our staff reaches out. Again, you might, if you're the point person and you're the financial person, you might just want to let your program staff know that there's other topics coming up. One of the topics that we're going to be looking for next month's office hours is summer site preparation and info, just to make sure if you're planning on doing summer programming, it's in your contract, what's required of it. May we're going to look at staff training and networking. June's going to be parent engagement and networking. So again, that's an area that we do expect our contractors to invest their time and resources into, is building those relationships with families. So June we'll be having that. July we'll be focusing on initiatives, goals, and capacity. And August, program positive youth development activities, program success. And September, claiming and reporting recap, because September it starts all over again for year 3. So if there's no other questions, we'll stay on for a few more minutes. All right. Well, thank you for your time. Look forward to seeing folks in May.